Welcome everyone to the March 30th meeting of the Board of Selectmen. I think everyone in the room knows the ground rules we've been dealing with lately, so I'll just list them. Patient urgency, parking lot for items that may want attention at a different time, trying to practice a lower volume of the conversation, trying to bring along a little joy and laughter. I think there are a couple of others, but if we can agree on those as ground rules tonight, we'll go that route. As is our tradition of late, a few moments of silence for any purpose, whether to simply quiet down, whether to prepare for the evening, or maybe just be grateful for the opportunity to be of service to the town. So a few moments of silence. So again, welcome everyone. So the agenda has been published. Are there any additional items that people would like to put forth for consideration? The way we will be a little disjointed in the first half hour or so because at 6:30 we have South Shore Community Action Council coming in to give a presentation. Moreover, FinCom would like to come in and talk about some items. So I think we'll take this very much out of order, and ta-da, here's FinCom.
I can do some of it, but get through all.
So thanks for you all, FinCom, coming in. We have an appointment at 6:30, and so we'd like to attack whatever you want to work with us on at this point. I know much of that is about the annual town meeting warrant articles, and I know part of your concern is the funding sources for several of those items.
I just want to make sure I sent an email with the technical one.
Actually, do I have
One
it?
is if we decide to pay off the debt on the school roof. And I don't know if that's a warrant article or not. I'll have to ask Robert. We're going to be taking in a minute. And the other one was...
Assessor?
There was one from the assessor that we got that you didn't have on there. That's correct.
And I meant to have sent, I apologize for not getting back to you today. I talked to the assessors last week on that, and she told me, take that one off. We're going to do that through their regular budget. So that $5,000 should have been in their regular budget.
Not as one lump. She said that you guys recommended it to do like 1,000.
Okay.
She's going to add an extra 1,000 a year or something.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Didn't
So-
you have I'm sorry,
Go right
the
ahead.
possibility of paying off two different things, the roof and the town barn?
So are we're putting a placeholder article in on that? Is that what's
Well,
happening?
that's why we're here. Yeah, that's why we're here.
I don't know if it's an article.
You could still, you'd have to segregate it because it's going to be coming out of the capital account, which is a 2/3 vote, so you'd have to sort of segregate it and say, the moderator would have to explain that this amount is a 2/3 vote,
Right, so if you just put a placeholder, we can always take it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a placeholder, I'll put a placeholder in for a separate article for it if we need it. Yeah. You mentioned another one too.
That's not a much of a revenue issue, right? It's just we're paying on something that's probably needs to be repaired again. Is that the?
The school roof, it predates the school project by a lot, and we're still paying, for years we only paid interest on it. It just seems, Barbara agreed, if we can, we have to look at the numbers, it might be smart to get that off the books.
But as part of the rationale, we should see what it will save us in an annual interest.
Yeah, I have that.
out of recess.
Okay, based on numbers I got back a month or so ago, those are currently costing us, let's see, there is $66,000 left for the town barn, $32,000 left for the roof. And they're costing us $23,000 in the budget right now, and we could,
No, 20,000 is what would come.
it would come, yeah, so we would come off, and it would take $75,000.
Maybe this is the differential.
The differential is $75,000. We're paying 23 a year now, we would pay it off for 98. We take that 23.
So this year would cost us 75,000 more, but then it would be gone. And it would come out of
And that would come out of the capital.
Those current are at much higher interest rates than current, but it's a small amount. It's really not worth refinancing it or bonding it. My opinion is paying it off if the money's available in capital to do it and just get rid of it.
Well, what it is
$2,000 in interest.
it's a cash flow issue, not an expense saving really, but it's cash flow.
Yeah, just,
And we haven't decided to do it, we just want an article to do it.
All right, so we're hoping for a placeholder
I have a
article while we
placeholder written
decide
down. I'll
this.
put it on the warrant, and you can tell me before we go to print whether you want to keep it or not.
Sure.
Yeah, and you want it written up as a straight-up transfer from capital stabilization? Or do you want the standard raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds language? I usually do that.
We're not going to raise an appropriate.
I understand that. I usually do that just as a flexibility item in the articles, but,
Unless for some reason we end up not doing it, we just want to raise and appropriate with just regular payment. Maybe we should just leave the flexibility in for the place for now.
Yeah, okay.
And we get
All right.
closer.
Mhm.
So I don't know, if now,
You're
you
short
want
of stuff.
the list of articles?
Pardon?
Do you want to go with this list we got from?
Did you also had a question about highway article? Do I remember that from you?
So just start at the top. and then
Okay.
then you get to-
Let's give us a moment to find that piece of paper. Okay.
My comment, I think the whole committee's comments are put together. We agree that, we are trying to put together a budget, and we will participate in the recommendations of what the funding sources are, or we'd like to have input into it ultimately, rather than just get presented.
Okay, so all of us should feel free to give input as we go down the list.
Well, yeah,
We're not quite there yet.
yeah, but we just mean that these, we assume are just suggestions from the selectmen for the funding sources?
Yeah, those were just suggestions. They were not,
Because we have other ideas about some of them already.
Sure. No, and in fact, I think Dale put this together as an initial draft.
this was just a draft, and I just put the funding sources in, some of them were capital and,
Yeah.
and some of them can be raised and appropriate. Again, I wasn't trying to jump on ahead of the committee. I I figured I'd put something somewhere just to get a totals at the, at the bottom line to see what was
And actually,
potentially
just to
coming
be
and where.
clear to FinCom, I don't think this board has discussed this at any point. So this was
Okay.
a first run-through, and very much not written in concrete.
So,
Do you want to go through your warrant articles? And whatever ones you have.
the money ones?
Would you like that? Okay.
It's the money ones. that-
Yeah,
we don't
if you want to do
have
money ones.
So do you want to lead us through that, Susan?
The first one's Article 5, for financial audits. There's one 5.
Yeah, that's raise and appropriate.
Sorry, number 8 is the inter-year valuation for $2,000.
Sorry.
Okay, we may choose to, we're talking about putting that as a special town meeting article and funding out of the reserve fund. That's a way to get it out of raise and appropriate. Article 9, again, we're just throwing ideas out, we haven't put this together. 9 is the triennial property valuation for $14,000. That has to be moved to appropriate. 10 is a police lease to own, that's one cruiser, I think, not two.
Mhm.
For $11,000. The first lease, the first vote has to be a warrant article. Article 11 is a stipend for the Council on Aging Director for $5,000. Article 13 to fund the OPEB trust fund. I'm sorry, 12, oh gosh.
Yeah.
How could I skip 12?
Please skip 12.
The command vehicle, we.
No.
We strongly feel, given that Article 15 is still paying for the previous one, that we do not undertake paying for a new one while there's still one, the previous one's not paid for. That's FinCom's recommendation.
And it better be this
Is
board's
that a general
recommendation.
consensus of this board as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want me to ask him if he wants to keep it on the warrant?
Not our warrant article.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, if the board's, I mean, do you want me to, do you just want to leave it there with negatives all the way around, or do you want to just pull it off if everybody's not going to support it?
It's better if it comes off.
What's that?
I think if he's willing, it's better if it comes off.
I agree with you. All right, I'll contact him.
I believe this payment is the last one, I think it's the last,
For the current command vehicle?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's what Robert said, it's the last one.
Sorry, skipping on. 13 is the OPEB trust fund, $20,000 from general regular stabilization, which we don't agree with that funding source at all. And again, it's possible we'll have reserve fund money available to do that as a special funding. Sick leave buyback. Again, a possibility that we could do that from the reserve fund, just get a special. Command vehicle lease payments. That's the payment on the previous command vehicle. Article 18 is paying back Kingston for $26,500. Did I forget one again? I'm sorry, I skip all those things on the side. The lease payments for the fire department, $105,000, that's for the number of vehicles. That's out of capital stabilization. We sort of concur with that. The Kingston payback. And then it's the dam out of capital stabilization.
That's a possibility of moving that up to special town meeting too, and funding that out of reserve fund.
Highway, the hot box, we don't know what that is, we've never heard of it or seen any information about it, but
It wasn't presented as.
I asked him, and he said when he went to your meeting to present his budget, you said, we're not going to discuss any capital items, so he didn't bring it up at that.
We have his capital.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have his
Yeah, but
capital plan. It's not-
it was a recent addition, it's something he had brought on afterwards.
it
And
certainly wasn't because we told him not to discuss it, but if it came up since then, it should have been brought to FinCom.
well,
And not just appear on a warrant, and we still don't really know we don't even know what it is, so.
We may want to, he may want to come talk to us about that.
So what are we going to do about that? Are we going to leave it for now?
I mean, we need some backup information about what it is.
Yeah, Jimmy will have to go and explain to him. Essentially what it is it's a machine, it's a hot mix machine on a trailer to fix potholes. And, it's a more permanent fix for a pothole than the coal patch that they put in them. And that's what it's about. That's a state bid list item. It's not required to go out to bid.
Something you can share with a nearby town, doesn't seem like something.
That's a question you'd have to ask Jimmy.
So we're going to leave it as an article for the moment?
Sure.
Okay.
Article 22 is the public safety building consultant for $25,000 out of capital stabilization. And that's the last money article on this list. My other question is that if you are aware of any other special town meeting articles, we don't know of any.
We don't either.
You don't know
I haven't seen any yet. I'm assuming I'll put the word out, but I'm assuming that as people go through the last run by their budget, and I'll go over it with Barbara too. Barbara usually picks these things up coming in. There may be some transfers back and forth, but it's easier, when you get closer, you get to the end of the year, the
Right.
easier it is to figure where the holes are in the budget.
Yeah, but usually we know something, but
Yeah.
I hope there's not. Anyway, so that's kind of,
When does the warrant go out?
the first of May.
And closes the regular warrant closes at C.
Closes
Yes.
today, yeah, it's
And
closed.
special goes right until we go to print.
Up to 2 weeks. It has to be published 2 weeks before, so it almost goes to the time of print.
So, are we done with that part? So we are going to have a brief discussion at some point about the Silver Lake stabilization article. I don't know if you guys want to be part of that or not.
You're going to do it now, or you?
I suppose we can. We have an appointment at 6:30. Shall we give it a go? All right, so I guess maybe this is a little bit, I'll introduce it. We had discussed rescinding the Silver Lake Stabilization Fund that we voted for last year. I think when we, the three selectmen, had that discussion, I said that I was pretty unsure about whether I would vote in favor of it, but that we would leave it on the warrant for the town to decide. I wanted to just open it for discussion one more time. We haven't had our discussion of what happened last week at the Silver Lake School Committee meeting, but decisions were made, a budget was voted, there was a 3.5-hour meeting. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on. Everyone had some pretty strong opinions, the FinCom, the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, but at least came to some kind of initial conclusion.
Conclusion or agreement?
Well, the school committee came to a point that they voted on a budget. Understanding that there's been quite a bit of contention, quite a bit of mistrust, and some of that had been building for years, I have a little bit of a concern that rescinding the stabilization fund, even though it's sort of virtual at this point, it hasn't been used for anything, would just perpetuate sort of the contention and the mistrust. And so I wanted to at least ask this board to entertain the possibility once more of not including that article on the town meeting warrant. And
Did the school put it on warrants for Halifax and Kingston?
pardon?
Did the school put in new warrants in Halifax and Kingston?
I believe they are voting on it, yeah. We are the only one that's voted for it. They need one. I don't know if they need one or both towns. They need
One.
both? One more town? So Halifax will probably be voting on it. I actually doubt that they would vote for it. I guess this is an initial plea that despite all that's been going on and all the tension between school committee and finance and Board of Selectmen, that at least until proven otherwise, that we just try to lower the volume of that conversation a little. Just my 2 cents. I mean, we did discuss, the board, that let's leave it to the town to decide, and FinCom may have an opinion.
I don't agree at all with Mark, and last year the Selectmen and the FinCom recommended against the article and it passed anyway. Since then, what has gone on has, I mean, yes, there is a lack of trust, and I think for good reason, and I think that until we can get to a point where we're confident in how things are handled and that information flows to us freely and clearly. I didn't understand, maybe we can come back and join you later to talk about the capital stabilization, the way this vote is going to now happen. I didn't understand this till Thursday night. I've been going to meetings for quite a while. And also, I don't know anything about this because it just kind of came out in passing, and apparently there's another issue that's in a process of settlement, which may result in another settlement to them, and it has not been mentioned to us yet either. And except at this meeting, one person attended a 4 o'clock meeting that we were not made aware of, and heard it and brought it up and brought it to our attention. And given all these factors, I think that we need to be certain that we can have confidence in people before we start supporting stabilization accounts. And I would strongly recommend, if they want to come back and do it the year after with a clear a presentation, a plan, written information, how it all works, what they're planning to do with it, what this other settlement is, how that plays into creating a stabilization account, that's not one thing. But the way things are now, I do not recommend and I guess I recommend you leave it on the warrant and let the people at the town meeting make that decision.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
My understanding of this account from being at a previous Silver Lake meeting is that once the funds are in this account, they can decide what to spend it on without coming back to town meeting. The amount is determined in town meeting, but then they decide what it's spent on.
Like an E&D account, because that's a stabilization account, really.
But even be that you have to, the towns can, like what we did this year. Spending out of E&D costs or changing their budget would provide the town an opportunity to say, no, that account, I don't think there's any control.
Yeah, lack of control makes me a little nervous.
Okay.
So,
Can I ask if the stabilization account goes through, they propose a certain amount to go into it? Do we know how that works? Do we know that if they want an X amount of dollars, would we, even if we didn't have the money and we voted no, would we still, if there were, the other two towns voted yes, would
Yeah.
still have to put money into that account as well?
Yes, it would, John Tuffy explained that it would be a
Okay.
line item on their budget, like anything else. So
Okay.
two towns,
That gives us even less control, I think.
Okay,
Do you want to vote that one now while you've
Yeah.
got it up, and I'll,
yeah. Shall we, so would one of you like to make a motion to leave that article as it is?
I move we include that article in the warrant.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I
Opposed, aye. Okay, I just wanted to have that discussion.
2-1.
And I'm totally reasonable to let town meeting make the decision, and people to argue either way. Okay.
Just one thing, and it's probably not the time to discuss it, but I just wanted to bring it up. You know, we have the Board of Selectmen vote on the warrant, you know, who recommended it in the Board of Selectmen vote. I've been thinking we probably should include their vote as well, just so that at a glance, people know how they voted, how you voted, whether you support it or whether
We
you're
do
against.
that on the money articles.
Yeah, on the money articles.
But on this one, I think this is in essence a money item. This was on.
Right, but I mean, we don't put a vote, we put approval, finance committee recommends or doesn't recommend.
Okay, I mean, again, it's probably not the time to discuss it, but I mean,
No, we vote on the whole thing before the, this is just a vote to put it on the warrant.
4-1.
Right, well,
Break it out that way.
yeah. But I mean, okay, or just a line that says Finance Committee approves, Finance Committee recommends, Finance Committee doesn't recommend.
Every year, what happens is when the day whatever we gave you to go to the final warrant, you give it to us, we add that line in, recommended, not recommended.
Oh, that's right, you do actually.
Yeah,
Okay,
and then we send it to the printer, that's how we've done it.
okay,
And
that's
you
fine.
remember, last year, we ran into recommended 1-to-1, which probably, we need to fix the language on that this year.
Yeah, probably.
Remember that? It's- Okay, perfect. Anything else for?
Well, if you get to the Silver Lake, I mean, feel free to go into that.
Okay, so we'll invite you back.
We already used the accountant, and so we.
Okay, all right, so we'll put that toward the end, and if you're available, great. Okay, thanks. Good to spend time with you guys. Look at that timing on this, wonderful.
On the money, Mark.
So, we had an appointment at 6:30 to meet with the South Shore Community Action Council, and there they are. So we welcome you, and we received a letter from you all a few weeks ago asking to come in and let us know what you're up to, and we're thrilled to have you here.
Well, thank you. Mr. Chairman, my name is Frank Casey. I'm on the Board of Directors of South Shore Community Action. And you probably don't recognize the gentleman next to me.
Probably not.
No, maybe not.
Dan Shannon, I'm on the board of the South Shore Community Action Council. I'm also a Plympton resident on Brook Street.
Ah, welcome both of you.
Thank you. We've started a new program this year, going out and visiting the 11 communities that we serve, and giving them a yearly report of goods and services. And we've had a lot of changes within the last year. We just moved to a new location, crossing the Registry of Deeds, brand new building. Dan is our president, he'll probably speak more about that. But for instance, we have 3 new classrooms. One has already been rented at Massasoit for medical certificates, and simultaneously they just opened a nursing school on the Brockton campus. So we're hoping to be a feeder up here for anybody that's truly interested in it. Sure.
Thank you.
These folders contain some general information about the
Thank you.
Community Action Council. There's also a report in there that is specific to the town of Plympton for, this is what, fiscal year 14, I believe, last September 30th. That's the small one. There's information about all the various programs. As Frank mentioned, we've been meeting with all the boards and selectmen of the 21 cities and towns that are part of our district. I believe the last time I was here to meet with you was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, so it's been a while. I apologize for us taking so long to get back. As I said, this describes all the various programs that we have. The report specific to Plympton talks about the services that citizens in the town of Plympton received last year. And there are, as part of this, our visits with the various cities and towns. You know, you've received a letter, and I'm saying this with a bit of a smile on my face, asking for any financial support that any town can provide us. I know it's rather interesting for me to sit here and talk about how our funding has been cut by the state when I'm fully aware of what's been happening in the town as well. But as part of our request this year, we do have that request of you. We have had sort of mixed results, I think, from town to town. Some towns have, sometimes, as to be expected. I believe next year we will likely look to see if we can't get a citizen article for support if necessary. I realize that it's late in the game this year. And I really just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do that, you know, people, we're a nonprofit organization. People, you know, they assume that we get grants and government contracts to provide services. Yes, we do for things like Head Start, some of our child care services, but there are other services that we provide that we actually self-fund. And one of the ones that I'm most proud of is our employment service program. We have a program where we train low-income people who are either unemployed or underemployed to obtain commercial driver's licenses. And not only to obtain a license, but to actually obtain employment. And in our first venture into this endeavor, we had 40 students, 38 of whom successfully received their commercial driver's license, and 34 of whom were employed on a full-time basis within 60 days of having finished the program. And I checked with Pat Daly, the director, this morning, and I was advised that all 34 of them are still employed on a full-time basis. And some of them have actually been promoted into other jobs. And the reason I bring this up is this is really the core of what we try to do as an organization. It's really about community. Our mission is to eradicate poverty on the South Shore, a lofty goal that will likely never be achieved, but nonetheless an important one. And so we have so many different programs that we offer to the cities and towns. And they're all outlined in the various pieces of information in your packet.
Just a couple of additions. The CDL program, the range of salaries is what, $22 to $24 an hour. And it was amazing because at first class, the average age was 47, which indicated these were long-term unemployed people. And yet be, it would still be bringing up a family and so forth, communications with dad not having a job, you know, all of a sudden the life changes dramatically. And it was great to see. The state turned around in their wisdom, and they financed us a second class. All of a sudden now, as you know, with all the problems statewide, the funding's shut up, and we picked it up out of our budget. It's the fourth class now, right?
I believe this is the fourth, yeah.
Fourth. So it's definitely had an impact on the local economy and capacity. And these are the things we really try to do.
So when we moved to the new location on Overy Street in Plymouth, which is actually right across from the courthouse in the prison, much more centrally located than where we had been on the Carver line before, so it's much easier for people to get to us in the program. But one of the things that that's allowed us to do is we now have a partnership with Massasoit Community College, who comes in and does some adult education programs in the evening for us, and we're hoping to expand that as well. But my favorite program that I have to mention is Volunteers and Tax Assistance, since I am a volunteer. And this is a program where we do tax returns for people free of charge. And I did notice in 2014, we only had 6 people from Plympton participating in this program, so my goal for next year is going to be to get more Plympton residents to come and do it. I really enjoy it. It's, I do a couple days a week, just a couple hours each day. But it makes a huge difference. And it's also great, I feel like I'm giving back, but more importantly, when I tell someone that they're getting this huge refund and they light up with this big smile, it's worth it.
Oh, you guarantee refunds?
Yeah, we will guarantee you won't get all of it. Because it's done in partnership with the IRS.
So you all are funded by public source, foundational source, private sources, all those pieces. So in the ideal world, if we could help financially, that would be wonderful. Aside from that, recognizing how tight everyone's budgets in all sectors are, what else can we do to help you all?
Well, I think one of the things we'd like to do is to improve our regular or ongoing communication with the towns.
Yeah.
I've talked to Lynette Santini, who I believe is the person that was communicating with all of you about setting up this meeting, about trying to set up a mechanism through which we can get the information that towns can post at the town hall and or the post office as opportunities come about. We have such a large catchment area of towns. Oftentimes, our ability to effectively communicate with the people who need our services is really dependent on the willingness of any particular individuals in the town to do some of the type work. So one of our goals going forward is to work with you with more timely information out to the community.
And that's basically how I got involved. I was a selectman for a good many years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know. This is great coming out from this forum.
That's right. Sitting on the other side.
But I was always surprised at how few selectmen knew what social community could do for their residents, particularly in an emergency situation, whether it be overnight housing or a family that has to find separate housing, probably because of physical contact with a member, male or female. We do have 4 rooms set aside. And these are the little things, but more importantly, and I'm not criticizing any of the boards of selectmen, but most of them did not know what we were doing. We have 26 major programs, which Dan and I could go on for 3 hours if you want to hear about each one and the dynamics of it and all, but I think you get a sense of where we are. This is the first time we've let Ian out of the block since tonight. Ian's hometown, but he's pretty busy too. I was surprised at the response from some of the area towns. We walked in asking if we could solicit permission to do a citizen petition. And in a couple of the towns, they readily agreed, sure, bring signatures, and we did that. And then as the time frame got closer and closer to the town meeting and the cutoff date for the warrant articles, the last 2 that I've attended myself, the Board of Selectmen has turned around and made them selectmen articles. which was really nice to hear. And yet, we've had this communication early on in each place. Everybody knows how tight the numbers are. So I'm looking for a little direction on short notice. You're aware of this. I'll leave it totally up to you. I heard earlier that the warrant is closing tomorrow night.
Tonight.
Tonight.
I think in the past, we've had, Tara, haven't we had articles on there for this? The people in town that rely and love you guys is Council on Aging. My wife was a longtime director, and now Chris Morano. I know you do, most of the services you provide in here are for the elderly. And we used to, and I don't know why we stopped, but we would put an article on there and let the taxpayers decide. Yes,
I'm a great believer in that.
it's usually less than $1 million, so,
Well, actually, that's, believe it or not, aside from the size of the community, we've asked for 5,000, which was kind of midpoint in contributions previous to this from towns of long-standing with supported our program. And,
we should have kept the FinCom here for this part
No, I want to get rid
of
of
the discussion.
I don't want to have this conversation with Susan, we're too good friends right now.
So again, I'm just looking for some direction from the people.
I mean, a couple things I'll say is, until we got your letter a few weeks ago, I was totally unaware of your organization.
Yeah.
And actually reading through what you do, just tremendously impressed with that list. And very much, one level of thing we can do is just make sure this stays on the radar screen. And I see a hand up, or two hands up. Tara first.
I do have a comment. The former selectman's assistant and my office in the town clerk's office, you do a lot of referrals to your organization. We're usually the first point of contact when people are coming in. So we do still refer to your facility.
Great.
I just wanted to know if I could see a copy of the report.
You have an extra one, Frank?
Absolutely. I brought extras, if anybody's interested after the meeting, later on in the meeting.
I feel like the sides,
He's got an empty one.
oh,
That could even be up.
You can
Try
actually,
that.
no, you have one that has it. Okay.
Now, in the past, you have provided us fresh vegetables and stuff, but I don't see you taking credit for it here.
Yeah, the Healthy Harvest program is actually still operational. In fact, Ron Merritt has been in the center of all of that, of course. And we're actually looking at the property on Overy Street. We got it to an auction. Long story short, every time the one remaining guy bid, we immediately outbid him, and after a few minutes, he realized there was no way he was getting it, so that was great. We were able to secure a USDA loan for it. But the point is, we only built on half of the property. So the other half of the property is essentially a vacant lot. And so we're now working with Ron and some other associations to actually do a community farm there as well. Not only for the growing of fruits and vegetables, but actually, opportunities for kids to have, get some hands-on experience and so forth. Yes, we do still support the Healthy Harvest program. It's one of our favorite ones, actually. But we do give the farmers the credit, since they're the ones that are giving us the excess food.
And another source is the Cabot Farmers Market. We have an agreement with a number of the farmers there. Whatever they have left over, they donate to us. And Dick Boyd, who's chairman down there again, he takes all those fresh vegetables and stores in his garage over on the farm, and then Monday morning they carry right to Plymouth. So we're kind of excited. There's things going on all the time. You might not be interested in vegetables, but,
I've had piles of it delivered and stored in my garage, and then I'd truck them around to, we set up out here, actually.
we don't stand cover on it.
Maybe I'll throw out, at least for discussion, the possibility that we put a warrant article on, that this year might have to be a token amount, but at least got the name out there and got the discussion out there, which both in terms of people that can use this, or maybe people with some philanthropic drive might be able to help.
Yeah, I would,
I mean, this sheet right here, I mean,
Yep.
spent 66,000 here.
So I think I'd like to make a motion that we add a warrant article supporting South Shore Community Action Council with a $2,000 donation this year.
If I may, before you go on, because we are a nonprofit, we would not want to word it as a donation. We would want to word it as a support to provide services to the citizens.
Support to provide.
Services to the citizens of Plympton.
Hmm.
One of those technical issues.
Got that?
I think so.
Essentially, that makes it a contractual arrangement. If we're going to accept the funds from the town, we have to designate them to serve citizens of Plympton.
second? That was a motion, wasn't it?
I was a motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Cool. So I'm a little embarrassed by the amount. I'm thrilled by getting the word out there, and I think at least as one on this board, I'd like to try to keep getting the word out there for you guys. Cool.
One last question. Town meeting, if this goes on as an article, should we be prepared to have somebody here from our group to speak or answer questions possibly? I know they can't sit with the board, you know, if they wanted to.
Got a resident.
They make the motion.
He could sit with the body.
Yeah, I mean, you end up
That
with
that
two.
may get him there, too.
You end up with 2 minutes, I think.
You guys did a good job picking up on that, both sides about this one.
It's the town
Yeah.
meeting definition of an elevator speech, is 2 minutes to make your presentation.
It's been a while, but I have done them in the past.
All right, well, we can check in with you on that.
And bring some of this, you know, in particular this, you know, so.
Okay? Excellent.
One last thing before we go.
Sure.
Well, two, actually. One is, I also put my card in there with Pat, so if you need to get a hold of me, it's my work card, but that's fine.
Okay.
And the other thing is that we do have an annual, we just recently had the one from this year, an annual awards dinner, which we invite the town selectmen. So I'm asking that next year when we hold that you all come as a guest.
We'd look forward to that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure. Thanks for all you do.
Good to see you. Thanks. My bet is Joe used to attend.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of, is Joe would have been there. All right.
They do, you know, Council on Aging depends on them a lot. You know, so.
I highly recommend for people that aren't aware of this organization to go to their website and see the stuff they do. It is so nuts and bolts helping and just directly making a difference. And maybe in year-end giving for those that do make those decisions, this is an organization I'm going to add to my list. Okay, so we're having sort of a disjointed agenda. Maybe we should go back to the top of this list and move through it, if that's all right with everyone.
Sure.
Okay, so that was executive. So next is the computer services contract. Dale has suggested that we go ahead and renew. It is at the same cost to previous years. Anything you want to say about that?
Other than we've gotten excellent service, I have no problem at all, no increase in price, and those are the main criteria that you look for in it. So if you want to stay with local computer store for one more year, I think that's fine. Have the
Any discussion?
No.
All right, so I make a motion that we renew our contract with local computer store.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's that one. So next is custodian pay scale. Darrell, who I think has been in employment in Plympton for at least 15 years, approached Dale about moving up to the high end of the range of the wage and personnel scale for custodian. He is presently at 1584. The high end of the range for fiscal year 15 is 1599, so that's a 15-cent an hour raise. And then wage and personnel 10 days ago voted a 2% increase in that scale. So this adds up to a total, I think, of $100 a year. Dale is comfortable that we have money in the building budget, and so I'd like to make a motion that we move Darrell up to the top end of the range of a townhouse custodian.
I second that. For discussion, I'm in favor of it, but what happens with the FinCom?
In this case, nothing. But like I said, the total amount, given his average hours on an annual basis, I think I calculated $104. There's enough money in the new townhouse account.
Now, but does he
To
now,
absorb
as part of wage and personnel, will he be a line item?
Wage and personnel broke him out as a separate line item this year.
No, previously. That's been there for a while.
Oh, yeah, he's not a, that salary is not a separate line item in the budget.
Right.
It's never been.
Okay.
But wage and personnel, it used to be lumped together with other similar positions under, I forget what the heading was, but in any event, for some reason, wage and personnel put custodial services as a separate line item and established the 16, whatever it was, 1602 an hour.
And I did check with Barbara on that, and she was okay with this. I did check with FinCom, utterly thrilled, but we're okay with it, particularly because it was such a small amount, because it was such a long-term and well-regarded employee. And I think next year probably we should just get it into the budget. But, okay. Comment? Discussion? So I think we had a motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's that one. So actually, let's move down the list here. I think there are a bunch of things we can just get off the list quickly. Public safety, building planning. I don't think there's anything that needs to be discussed tonight, unless you all have something on that.
Not at this point.
The DOR follow-up report, I think similarly, we left that on, but I don't think there's anything for discussion tonight on that.
Is there anything in that needs to be a warrant article, other than funding? We know we can't fund anything, but it seems though there was some
Public
things.
safety?
Pardon me?
In
The DOR?
DOR.
DOR?
One that I'm thinking of is the one to do with, the town has passed a article, I was going to say bylaw, I don't think it's a bylaw, but whereby interest and penalties on delinquent taxes, a portion of it goes into a fund that's used to fund the collection of other taxes. And I think they recommended that we change that. One or the other can't, the Attorney General approved it, so, why we're having a debate over it at this point, I don't know, but one or the other of those pieces, either the penalty or the interest,
Is that on the tax title account?
can't happen to it. I think maybe put a placeholder for that.
Sure, yeah. I know that they had recommended altering the revolving account for tax title, and that's been done. The assessors they were using fees to, as part of...
From the planning board or something.
Right, planning board fees, and they couldn't do that, so that's been dropped on this warrant.
So you're not talking about this account?
What is it? Yeah,
So you think that may be questionable, or that we may need to change something on that,
well, there's something in there, that's in this, that's in...
on the warrant?
No, this is one we always do.
Okay.
And in addition to that, there's a rule that the interest and penalties go in here into the same account and used for the same thing. And she said that we can't do it exactly the way we did it.
Okay. So we'll put in a placeholder on that.
Got it.
Okay. Let's see. PEG access preparations, I guess we'll talk in a moment about additional warrant articles. I have not heard from Koppelman and Page about the draft article we have already. I was sort of waiting to see what came up tonight. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Or I guess we actually might as well discuss it now. You asked for a place saver article on some other alternative broadcasting means.
Yes, based on the way, what town, Kristen? You remember all the information we get from the Douglas committee?
Yep.
And it's basically, it's an alternative, but it could also be an addition if we wanted to record more meetings, you know, like, for instance, I think the FinCom meeting should be during this high season, should be recorded. I think the Concom and some of those other committees, that the minutes aren't necessarily completed. If we had a recording of it, then we would have that kind of information. So it's kind of, it could be in conjunction with cable, or it could, I mean, I don't know now, are we live on Channel 15 or not? Do we know?
No, it's still, at least the last time I checked, which was probably Saturday, it wasn't working. But these recordings are going on YouTube. They're being loaded much more rapidly now, and usually I think the expectation is within a few days after the recording, they're going to be up and going again. So you're working on the language on that? Okay, so...
We want a placeholder in for publication of meetings, in a general sense, and then we'll flesh it out after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Solar ongoing projects, I don't think we have anything tonight.
No, we do.
Ooh.
I met with the people that are still battling the state on the south side of 44, and they now have the possibility that they could still build on the private landowners piece on the south side of 44, but they also could potentially go on Neil Vopat's property that abuts the existing.
Is that Steinke and his group?
Yeah, Andy Steinke, yeah. And now Borrego is involved in it. Borrego is going to be the builder. They're the ones that built the one that's on the Norrie property. So I met with them Friday now. We're disagreeing on some numbers. So I'm not sure. But I also have emailed Blue Wave to see, you know, what they're going to do here, because are we going to go to town meeting with a pilot or not? Or, you know, it's going to be at some point. I think they're probably going to just say goodbye if these lawsuits keep coming. But I don't know, because right now, if I can't get a pretty guaranteed PPA from Blue Wave, then I'm going to make that part of the deal with the other one. The Blue Wave deal, if you remember, is 10.75 cents a kilowatt, 20 years, no escalator. Now, when we agreed to disagree last Friday, we were at 11 cents and a 2% a year escalator. So, but it's a bird in the hand thing too, because they have got, Borrego's got two under construction sites, one in Plymouth and one in Wareham on A.D. Makepeace property. And they can sign a PPA with the town on a project that's underway. So, anyway,
So next steps there are?
well,
Waiting to hear from.
yeah,
Clive.
well, yeah, and we're gonna do a dance here on the 11 cents and stuff,
Okay.
but as I think that you noticed in the Silver Lakes budget, the money that they're saving from the solar, so it's
Yeah,
real money.
I think it's $125,000 a year.
Yeah, and ours, I think, will be 60, under this 11 cents thing, so.
Okay. Anything for the solar bylaw committee?
The public hearing is next Monday night with the planning board at 8 o'clock. So if you're interested in the solar bylaw, possible changes, go to that meeting.
Okay. Let's see. Town government vacancies. Tara is here in the room. We had the election papers turn-in deadline come and pass, and
I just have a quick update. So I've been able to already certify the names of everything that's been handed in. So this is the update. I'll put it on
Thank you,
the
Tara.
website. Basically, the assessor for 3 years position had nomination papers pulled for re-election, but the papers weren't returned for certification, and I'm not sure why, but that was one that we don't have, there won't be a name printed on the ballot for that. That would have to be a write-in candidate if somebody wants the 3-year term for assessor. We don't have any people for the finance committee. There were 2 positions, one for 3 years, one for 2 years to fulfill an unfulfilled term due to a resignation. We do have one position for planning board. That was for 5 years. Those nomination papers have been pulled and certified. But there was one position left just for 1 year, and that's to fulfill an unfulfilled term. And if anybody is interested, that might be a good year to get your feet wet for just a year, and see if you're interested in staying on that board for 2 years. And
I've been working on that guy for a while, so
that's it. Everybody else has turned, we have positions, library trustee, there's 2 positions available and only one person has pulled papers and certified, have certified names. I'll have the update on the website.
thank you, Tara. So I would just echo that. Planning board, that position is for 1 year. Right? It would have to be as a write-in candidate, but that's a wonderful way to sort of jump in, get a sense of it. Similarly, somewhat similarly, FinCom has an opening, one of the openings for 3 years, one for 2 years. As Tara said, if you want to make a big difference in this town, if you want to really get into the nuts and bolts of how town government works, it's a great place to get into that. There's a fair amount of a learning curve there. It's a great position for someone that has previous experience in finance, but we certainly need help over there. Okay.
Just actually to reiterate too, even though the deadline was today at 5 o'clock, there's still possibilities to be a write-in candidate leading right up to the election. So if you're still want to talk to them about it, because it's still a possibility to be elected as a write-in candidate.
So let's jump back up to annual town meeting preparations. I think there are a couple more warrant articles that we needed to discuss and maybe add. John, you had the public access, and we've talked about that, and Dale will add that. You had, I think, maybe 3 more, right?
I had sale of Maple Street / Palmer Road land, and I had
Minutes.
well, the requiring minutes and agendas, actually, to be posted.
Right, so you have, Dale, you have both of those. I think maybe we want to have some discussion on the minutes thing. So maybe we'll go there, but you have John's,
I have his email that he had sent recommending what he was within. The pilot agreement is on the warrant already. The PPA does not have to go on the warrant. That's an executive run for you people. I have a placeholder which you just established for the taping and publication and video of meetings. You know, that's one thing. You asked for a
and that one
placeholder.
I think I want to discuss for a minute. And you have the placeholder for Maple Street.
I don't. I mean, that's up to
So
you guys.
actually, I'm
Do I
gonna
wanna
step
put
down
on-
in case
Do
there's-
you guys want to put on one for?
I am in a butter to that property, so I'm just going to step down if there's any discussion to go on.
The point on putting it on there is give the taxpayers the opportunity to sell that property. I think by state law, the money would have to go in, would have to be used on capital items, but if it's not, we would say in this article that the proceeds would go into the capital stabilization account, and has the potential of, it perked, and there's like 17 acres. We think that there's probably 2 large lots there, and they could be worth as much as 150 grand apiece. So you could realize $300,000 and use that money to purchase other property for the public safety building. Well, even if we do this stuff here, it would go in there, it would help fund that. It's just an opportunity. That property was taken by tax title. Usually property that is taken by tax title is ultimately sold. In theory, it pays the taxes back. In this case, it does quite a bit more than that. And I think it should be a taxpayer decision. I mean, either you like it or you don't, and the taxpayer, the town meeting can decide that.
Any discussion from the audience? No? We'll make a motion
Make a motion that we include that article on the town meeting warrant.
that we include a placeholder for it, or
Yeah, placeholder for.
second? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. So then I just wanted to discuss for a minute this minutes bylaw. I know some other towns have done it, and some haven't.
We get some information from Pembroke. Kristen did that listed the towns that have it. Tara did some research, and you have a town that tried it, and it was defeated, and one that passed it, right?
Okay. So there is state law that more or less requires all of this as it is there not?
The state law says that minutes if there's a written request, minutes have to be provided within 10 days, even if they're in a draft form.
The actual wording for all minutes, so even if there is no request, is that it needs to be forwarded in a timely manner to the town clerk. And that leaves a lot of ambiguity. And in some cases in our town, timely manner is not even, doesn't even fall under any category. We don't get any minutes sometimes from a lot of boards. And it's hard when people are working on volunteer boards that don't meet very often, or there's no quorum. It's hard to set a policy for standardizing what that timely manner is in a small town like this, because sometimes they don't meet for a couple of weeks. But this looks like it's in an effort to try to make sure that all of the committees and boards comply with what the state law is and sort of make them accountable, or the clerk of that board helps them with getting the minutes to the public, to the residents, so that they're more educated on what the next meeting is going to be.
So the next to last sentence in this reads, "All boards, committees, commissions, and subcommittees not complying with this bylaw shall be subject to dismissal of the chairperson and clerk." And who's doing that? I don't...
Who's the enforcing
That's a good
officer?
question.
And that's one of the reasons why some of the towns that did try to put it on town meeting floor, they voted it down, because they don't know how this is an enforceable rule. Aside from the state law where an actual complaint can be filed, who enforces this type of language and rule? And although, how do you make someone accountable for it?
And I think that's my concern with this article in general, is it feels like there's already state law. I hate that sentence because it could just so easily lead to firefight and abuse.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a draft. I mean, a few years ago, I tried to get through town meeting something where people that miss several meetings.
I
Remember, and that
didn't fly very well either.
Yeah.
I'm not in love with this bylaw. I mean, I would skip it, but I mean, I do understand the rationale for cleaning it up and giving town meeting the chance to vote on it. This just looks like a mess to me. It's going to waste a lot of time and not go anywhere and really not help, but that's just my opinion.
I understand the frustration for both people not showing up and then not resigning either, as well as the need to be able to get the appropriate administrative information. But we don't have full boards now, and if it will be the Board of Selectmen or whoever it is that tries to enforce this once, and you're going to have very empty boards at that point. Because we've all done this for a while, and we all know that we've done other things we could do, with our evenings, but I just think that there's the potential, at least with that language, and of course we can clean that up somewhere, but then there isn't much left of the purpose of the bylaw. So I haven't read the full text of it, but at least with that language, that would not be something I would be supportive of.
So really, the question is whether we want to put a placeholder on there and work on this, or whether we want to save it for another year. Sir?
I do think there is language that is needed, because the minutes of the meeting, according to state law, need to be filed in a timely manner. And we have minutes that have not been filed for 8 months. That's not timely. I'm sorry.
Unless the board hasn't met anything.
Oh, the board has met many times. Many times. And you know, and there's other committees that haven't filed in 3.5 months, so. And I haven't dug in all of them yet. So, there's a problem.
The point is, though, there's already a state law.
Okay, so how do we do it? Does it take me to come down and look up every single one?
Well, no, but every resident or anybody is allowed to request information and
Right.
fall under the law. So unfortunately, it would have to be people who are in the best interest of the town filing an
Exactly
actual
my point,
complaint.
which means that if somebody doesn't do it, nothing happens. It could be a year, it could be 2 years if there's no minutes filed.
Do we know what the state does if somebody requests minutes and they're not provided within 10 days, then you file a complaint with the Attorney General? And then what does the Attorney General do? Do we know?
They look to the board to see if there's been a reasonable resolution to that request. If they'll send them a letter directly to the board, the Attorney General's office. And they have a certain amount of time to comply with it, and usually it gets provided at that point.
But there's no waterboarding or anything threatened?
No, I think there may possibly have been cases where, I don't know if they've fined the board. I don't know about that. But it would take like 6 months in any case to get it that far, I think. Now you're 6 months longer. Every board and committee signs paperwork from our office when they sign that they're gonna be a member of these boards. And they are saying that they will comply with it. So one thing that we do in our office is we go through the book that we have and we try to keep 3 months worth of minutes and or postings in the book. And we have been following up with people when we go to file the things that are beyond 3 months. But it's again one of those not our responsibilities, but because we are touching the paperwork and see it, we do try to follow up. So, I mean, it could be just more of a general rule that at least 3 months before we file, so that we don't have to go chasing after the board, to comply with what the state law is that they've signed and said that they would comply by. I don't know how much more anybody can sort of disarm the board.
Well, you know what the chairman of the Selectmen could do? Chairman of the Board of Selectmen could do? Just have a standing request for everybody's minutes, every 10 days.
I don't recommend doing a bylaw for it, for a local, making it so specific to our town.
I mean, you could take a vote as a policy. The board could vote that as a policy, just what.
For the people they
Pembroke did.
appoint.
Pardon me?
For the people they appoint.
Right, you have no control over the elected boards, so,
But what if the chairman of the Selectmen just had a standard request from every board for a copy of the minutes? And if he didn't receive them within 10 days, he'd file with the state.
that would work.
I just really think you're gonna end up with a lot of people not doing this anymore.
Well, the
I mean, I
other thing
understand
is,
it's really difficult here, but that,
Is there a particular board that's the problem?
It's,
Because I know yours are posted, I read them.
it's probably
For example,
3 or
the
4.
Board of Health, I don't think ours are up online. Ours are posted currently with the Board of Health, with the town clerk's office. So you can get a hard copy, but we're, 3 of us on the Board of Health are gonna take the class so that we can put it up
yeah, no, we still put everything.
to alleviate,
Yeah.
you, but they are turned in, on a regular basis.
So sometimes what does happen is they have one meeting, they'll meet once and then not meet for another month. And they'll approve their minutes from the previous meeting. And if weeks have passed, it's hard, every board is different with when they meet. And especially if there are just a small amount of people on the board and say there isn't a quorum that shows up. So you might plan on having approved minutes at the next meeting and not have enough people here, so now you go to the next one. So it's just hard to make a really strict time constraint. I do know, and we can change it in our office, we just keep 3 months worth of posted meetings in our book because we get full. But it could be, less of an amount of time. The other thing is all the boards can just give what they want in draft form, even if they're not approved. And it would have to say this is a draft and has not been approved. If you want more consistent minutes put up, even if they're not approved, just so people know what they're talking about at the next meeting.
So it sounds to me that although some of the extra work falls on you, you're not advocating for this.
I'm not advocating for putting a specific time constraint on all of our volunteer boards who barely meet anyways. I do like the idea of draft minutes being provided, even if it's just chick and scratch. I mean, we are putting them up on the website, so at least, even if they're not approved, at least the people, the residents will know what the next meeting will have, we'll be talking about.
John?
Maybe the issue here is really that a warrant article is needed for elected boards. And a policy can be drafted for boards appointed by the board of selectmen.
That is the case.
Because, I mean, it seems to me that if you have volunteer boards, and of course it is very different. Historical Commission cannot meet for 4 months. And Historic District Commission cannot meet for a year and a half. So, conceivably they, it's only on an as-needed basis. But if the elected boards are where the issue is, or that's an issue where the selectmen are in control. The selectmen do have control, as much as you can with the volunteer staff, of saying reaching out to the chairs of the various committees, saying, you really need to tighten up the minutes. You have to. It's required. And then when they come up for reappointment, and if you have a board that just hasn't turned in minutes, I'm not sure why you reappoint them, then now you may have a vacancy on that board. But at least there you have control over what you have control over, and then there's perhaps some expectations set for, that was what the town is setting for expectations by town meeting of what they would like their elected boards to do. And more of the elected boards, not all, but more have staff to be able to do that. When we run into the issue is when you're asking a volunteer who's been to a meeting perhaps more than one during the week to do that, they've got to find more time to then go and write up the minutes and get them in. And so they might not do it until right before the next meeting.
We also tried at the very beginning of this process in 2010 to include on our notice of meeting posting something that isn't required by the state, where we said what was the date of your last approved minutes. And it was us trying to administratively get them to forward their minutes before they posted the meeting for the next one. And it didn't work. That was our effort, but we already saw that we were trying to get them to give us our minutes before they posted their next meeting, but it's not required by the state.
So I guess our decision tonight is whether we want to put a warrant article on or not. I personally fully acknowledge the problem, and I'm not sure it's helped that much by law, so I'd be inclined to not put it on the warrant.
I'm not gonna follow my sword. I don't really, I do care, but we are headed for issues, and the issue probably is more of not having minutes, minutes being late. It's the issue is more what the minutes contain. So the whole thing maybe gets addressed if more meetings, or the important meetings, are filmed, recorded, whatever. I know that one project that I got into, and then ultimately, we had to hire an engineer to come in and, should have been something that I could have done, but the minutes said nothing. I mean, I think I'd have rather have had no minutes than what I had, and it ended up, and we're in a lawsuit over it. So, I mean, it's somehow this has to be tightened up, but.
I am willing to also set up another training since there's been a turnover of a lot of people on boards, but we could get somebody from the Division of Open Government here to train all of the boards again and have the specifics mentioned. They are all online and they're always on my the town page, town clerk's website. Everything that you're talking about is spelled out clear as day.
So it's more an education issue or an emphasis issue than new regulations, it seems to me.
Yep. And I think that it could be trained to everybody, and it could be a policy based on how we file our minutes.
So we know that piece is there, that we need education and emphasis. So
Do they cover hearings?
The open meeting law.
Those training sessions?
Open government.
No, but, like the Concom, Planning Board,
Well, we've
ZBA.
had a lot of come here on land use hearings. We've already
Yes.
had them come to trainings on hearings.
Yeah, so we might run that again, too.
Okay.
Because those are the ones that we end up in court with.
Yeah.
So are we feeling we'll leave this off the warrant? Okay, so I make a motion to leave it off the warrant.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recognizing it's a problem, and we will stick with it.
I disagree that it is a problem, and it's a problem as far as I'm concerned about lack of openness in government. And that's a major concern to me.
And I totally agree, but we also agree there are rules in place already.
And how are they working, sir?
They're not working well, and we're hoping that more education and emphasis will be helpful. And this board can work on that, and we will. Okay. Well, we voted.
But that as a citizen,
Oh, that's what I'm speaking.
no, but as a citizen, you can police it. I mean, part of the issue we've got is if we have these policies, who's going to be the policeman and what stun gun is he going to carry,
Well, and that is when it always comes up, is when there's a problem. And that's when the policies come in to play. When somebody can't find their information and there's a problem, then that comes to light.
Okay, boards, commissions, committees, do your minutes, do good minutes, and get them in quickly, please.
On all of the specifics on what should be included in the posting and what should be included in the minutes are on the Attorney General Open Meeting Law website and the town clerk's page.
And particularly, once we get past elections and the July 1st appointments, I mean, that's the time to have another training session. Okay, onward. Just a quick plea on parking. A very well-intentioned and concerned citizen came to me with some concerns that there's a tendency for the parking spaces out here by the entrance to get filled up, and that not infrequently elderly and infirm have to park further away in a long walk in. So a request was made to the fire department to have the fire people, especially, and people in the trailers, that when townhouse is open, to park further away to leave some spaces open. And I think just as a courtesy, we might ask all of the public in general, when townhouse is open, to try to leave those spaces closer to the townhouse available for those that it's a bit of a challenge to get in here. And so we'll start campaigning on that a little bit. Let me just drop down. We still have the fiscal 16 budget discussion and some updates on the Silver Lake school budget, but maybe we can just get through the other stuff and know that will be the last item that we'll deal with. In terms of agenda and dates to remember, I wanted to note that I was in error when I listed the next Board of Selectmen meetings. Our next meeting is not at 5:30 for an executive session next week. It is for 5 p.m. and then open meeting at 6. Similarly, the meeting on the 13th, at least at this time, we do not have an executive session scheduled, although it was listed this way. So unless something comes up, the open meeting will start at 6 p.m. That's that. I think maybe next is to go to town coordinator report.
Just basics, the water damage that we suffered from the ice dams in the treasurer's office. They came in and cleaned the carpets on that last Friday, or Thursday, excuse me. And Rebuildex will be doing an air quality test in there this Thursday, just to see that it's okay. And if it is okay, then they'll come back in and do the repairs that are necessary based on the damage from the ice dams.
Dale, what time will they be coming in to do that test? There was some concern in that office that,
In the morning.
yeah, they said it was very bad air quality when you first go into the room, and then after it's been open, and
Yeah, they said it was better this morning, but, after it was cleaned on
Yeah.
Thursday, but, I could attempt to change it until...
no, they just, if they can get in there in the morning, that's probably good. They-
Yeah, well, it takes, it's a matter of hours until this stuff is done, so then they'll test it throughout Thursday, probably come back on Friday to pick up all of their equipment.
That'd probably be fine then.
We had a septic backup, which we took care of today. The fire station was the problem, but I believe that was all worked out. They were here this afternoon working on that, and...
What was the problem? Do we know the source of the problem?
The drains in the fire station were not working, in the fire station itself. The trailer was still, seemed to be okay, and this building was fine, so, because it's all on one common system. So they had to basically call Roto-Rooter, and I just found out we've got somebody in town who does that, so it's really good. But in any event, they took care of that today. Beyond that, the warrant's closed. We know that.
Do we have to do something to the warrant? Do we vote that closed, or does it?
I move we close the warrant.
Second.
Are we okay?
Can I just ask a quick question about the warrant, and using the term placeholder for articles? I just want to make sure that I've seen in the past how some warrant articles have been written not very specific. And so by the time of printing, I would hope that more specific details were given so that the residents of the town don't see it for the first time the day of the town meeting. I've just noticed in the past that some of the warrant articles have been really vague, and I know for some of them that I have to submit to the Attorney General, there's amendment upon amendment when a lot of the specifics should have been given to the residents well in advance. So I'm a little concerned about the word placeholder. So just my 2 cents about that. So I hope that as much information that can be given is given before it's printed and sent to the residents.
Duly noted, and we will work on that. We, the Board of Selectmen, are intending to have a session before town meeting, open to the public, to go over all of these and deal with it on an education basis. Clearly, having them cleaned up and as nailed down as possible is something to aim for. Let's see, where were we? Oh, so we're closing the warrant. Should we wait for FinCom just in case they came up with something else if they come back?
Okay.
So let's let that sit for a few minutes just in case. Pardon? We have a couple more items and then we'll invite them back. FinCom may or may not come back and join us. So warrant closing. So I think we are down to correspondence.
highlight of my day. Excuse me, this is, I believe, an invitation to the presidential fireside chat at Bridgewater State College, or University. Save the date for the Plymouth County Communities Collaborating for Change Conference, which is the Brockton Area Opioid Coalition. It's from the law offices of Beauregard, Burke, and Franco. They're advocating for support for a casino in New Bedford. I'll remember that. This is from Bristol County Agricultural High School. It says that there's an estimated one student attending from Plympton, and the current rate is $18,860 a year. This is Chapter 90. Needs to be signed for Highway. United Way of Greater Plymouth County. Oh, I thought this might be good for Garden Club. They have a supply of plastic bags for volunteer projects for cleanup. It says a clean and healthy community is the United Way, and they're free. So if the Garden Club wants to contact them and get them, they can. This is from Resource Controls, again about the wells on Main Street. They're just copies of the letters sent to the residents, and all of the water was found to be
Did
within.
you get that? No, didn't.
This is an invitation to the 6th grade DARE graduation. Wait a minute, that's the wrong one, sorry. One for each of us. This is ongoing litigation. This is the Plympton Halifax Express. And that wraps up correspondence.
I think that brings us up to the Silver Lake budget and/or the fiscal 16 budget discussion.
Go ahead.
Anything else on fiscal 16
Do you
before?
want to do the minutes? Get that out of the way, too?
Thank you. Oh, boy, you have a lot of changes.
Oh.
I don't really, it's just, I scribbled a lot.
Okay. I had a few, so I guess we should work off yours if there are more.
Okay, under annual meeting preparations, it just says new articles. I added the word warrant, just to make it clearer. Mr. Russo stated that some of the article,
We want to change that
Verbiage.
to, Mr. Russo stated that some of the articles involve complex issues
okay,
and suggests.
that's fine, yeah.
All right, so
My rewrite was longer, but yours is more succinct, so.
that's like a rarity that I get the succinctness award.
Okay, under public safety, I think the first bullet, it says, currently FinCom is not in favor of the Board of Selectmen proposed consultant for the public safety building. I think that they were not in favor of hiring the proposed consultant prior to town meeting. Not that they're against hiring the consultant. At least, that's not what I understood at that meeting.
Agreed?
In my statement, their reluctance to hire a consultant now is that it was too close to town meeting for the Board of Selectmen and the Capital Improvement Campaign Committee to make that decision. On the second page,
Let me just go back to that
Oh, sorry.
page. I did on the second bullet point, in the second sentence, it says, Mr. Russo believes FinCom came in cold to the meeting last week. And then I'd like to strike the rest of that sentence and have it read instead, and hadn't been made aware of the background work done leading to the request for a consultant.
you've got that written down, we'll just
I
give
do,
it
I'll give
both
that
in
to you.
time. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, on page 2, in the last sentence of the first paragraph, is it Comcast?
No, and it should read Carver Halifax Studio. I got
Okay,
that
so
one
you've
as
got
well.
that one.
And there is an extra apostrophe
Oh,
there.
yeah. Okay. Under Town Coordinator, the company's name is Service Master, not Masters. Just, I happen to know that because my brother worked for them for a gazillion years.
Wow.
And then, under the approval, again, we still have March 2nd, but it's March 5th.
Okay, great.
Just little stuff. That's it.
Okay. Sir?
Move we accept as amended by the amenders.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's quite a bemused look over at that end of the table. Okay. Could you see if FinCom wants to join us? Sure. And maybe while and if they want, they may or may not, but we will be closing otherwise pretty quickly. I will give out a couple things. These are things from the Silver Lake School Committee meeting last Thursday night. It was 3.5 hours. I finally left, but they hadn't even gone on to the other business besides budget. This is the new capital plan, and I won't say much depending on whether FinCom will come back. This is the latest budget. It is the one that was approved, essentially a 2.3% increase. This is the school district's assessments based on that budget. And let's see, this is how they got to the slightly smaller budget, what they reduced to get there. And then the last one, you can see why this took 3.5 hours, is the excess and deficiency fund, sort of a reckoning of how we got there.
We'd like 5 minutes, Dave, just want to wrap something up that they're in the
Okay.
middle of, and
Okay, so maybe we can deal with signing the stuff we have to sign during that time. John may want to read some of this stuff over. Rather than comment further, we might as well have FinCom come in, and then we can give a summary of what happened Thursday night. So we'll stay on camera and maybe be quiet while we sign all the pieces of paper. They're watching us.
No, those are not.
Those are not our tabs?
No. That's what I just puzzled in. This one has 3, and it has to go back to John because he missed 2.
Okay.
You missed two.
The paper ones, I heard you guys talking, and I'm saying, oh, they used to leave them separate.
So we need to remember to close the warrant after we've talked with FinCom a little bit. Actually, I might just mention 3 agenda items that we will be including next week, just so we can be thinking about them a little. There will be the ambulance receivables that we have to clean up, and we'll deal with that next Monday night. Some additional concerns have come up about the assessor accompanying the fire department when they do smoke detector inspections. And so there's been the request for additional conversation about that decision.
Concerns from the fire department?
Yep. And then the third one, I'll just mention, maybe in case anyone wants to think about it a little, is town moderator spoke to me about the possibility of obtaining sandwich boards to put at the major entrances to town, announcing upcoming town meeting, and then the day of town meeting, reminding people to vote. So there'll be a little exploration this week of ways that that could be done and whether there are any funding sources available, and we'll discuss that next week. And I'll leave you to all the pieces of paper.
I just remembered something. I remember I was going to call Jared, our representative, and I got a response on my questions from Lisa Kreiswicki. And basically, I'll read a little bit of what she says. I am very familiar with the issue in Plympton, and it is not unique.
This is the assessment issue? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
The MRGF annually is based on estimated property tax increases, estimated new growth, estimated state aid, and finally estimated locally generated recurring receipts. Case of Plympton, there was a very large increase in growth in 2014, which will impact the estimated new growth for a couple of years. This is not a unique situation. It is something that happens when there is one-year jump in growth or other recurring revenue sources, as you can see below. And basically what she's saying, because we had that big increase, now they're projecting further big increases. And basically, there's nothing we can do about it except file an appeal. And if you look at the reasons for an appeal, there we would have to say we have a large unexpected expenditure coming up. Things like that. There's 3 reasons for it. So again, it's back to how bad this formula is. It's a uniform formula-driven calculation, and it is what it is.
Sir?
Are you referring to the Department of Revenue's cherry sheet assessment formula?
It's, if you see what happened to Plympton at Silver Lake, it is all because of this growth formula.
I just wanted to let you know that I drafted a letter to Representative Colfer and Senator Kennedy expressing the extreme situation that the Department of Revenue's assessment put me in as the representative on the school committee vote that I have tonight. I haven't sent it yet. I'm bringing it to my next school committee meeting to share with the committee. I'm acting as an individual, but I just feel it's right to let you know the correspondence I'm sending out. But I wanted to let you know I am expressing my dissatisfaction with the Department of Revenue's assessment of Plympton and how difficult it was to come up with a budget for the Silver Lake Regional High School and Middle School, especially in light of the Department of Education, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's foundation budget requirements. They contradict each other in some regards.
Okay.
maybe somebody's gonna take over and go through all of this. I'll be glad to send you my files. We
Watch
actually,
out, when he threatens that, he's got boxes and boxes and
I
boxes.
already owe the Board of Selectmen thanks for the appointment to the Silver Lake. So, and thank yous are in the mail.
Thank you for pursuing that. So, FinCom is back. So we have last on our agenda to talk about anything we want to talk about the fiscal year 16 budget, and I wanted to update the Board of Selectmen on what happened Thursday night at the school committee. So just to let FinCom know, I have passed out the one-pager on the budget that was passed Thursday night with a 2.3% increase. I passed out the revised, the latest iteration of the long-term capital campaign. That board you'll see is sort of front-loaded with the first couple of years, the first year being 500,000 or 600,000, and the second in the 500,000 range, and the third and fourth and fifth year much, much less. I passed out as well the cuts that were made in the previous iteration of the budget that got it down to the level it got down to. The bottom line is it was a 3.5-hour meeting to get through budget stuff, and that didn't even cover all the rest of the stuff that they were going to cover. And the bottom line is they ended up improving the budget with a 2.3% increase. Most of the capital projects stripped out of that. They also approved a fiscal year 16 capital expenditures of $600,000. The bottom line in all of that is, I think it leaves $1.2 million of the Pembroke settlement to come back to the towns in the fall as a reduced assessment. There was a lot of back and forth along the way. Several representatives of the Tri-Town FinComs, several representatives of the Tri-Town Board of Selectmen. Those groups very clearly put forth to the school committee the limited resources of the towns. The school committee put forth pretty forcefully the minimum that they felt they needed to run the school. So that's the bottom line at this point. They are giving us a budget to look at with a 2.3% increase. One thing that did come out of it is, I think, hopefully, a clear understanding that in a lot of ways it felt like this is kicking down the road one more year, the can, of the problem. And there was quite a bit of discussion that if $600,000 in capital spending was done in fiscal year 16, it might well be that there would not be money for capital spending in fiscal year 17 without decreasing the operating budget. So I hope that's a fair synopsis of what went on. It was pretty intense. But I mean, I do feel like both sides clearly had the chance to present their opinion, or all sides, and that everyone was heard. Susan sat through the whole thing. I think this is probably about 20 hours of meetings. Susan has me beat by about 5 on that, but quite a process. Do you want to comment, Susan?
I guess I would reiterate that what the kicking the can metaphor that was used over and over, but that, we just come from looking at essentially level funding almost all departments with the percent increase recommended by wage and personnel, and a little bit of an exception in order to fund the special ed increase, the vocational increase, all beyond our control. So the Lake budget, which is within the control of the towns, 2.5% increase, but versus a, 0% increase in another department at a huge number, it's a big number to start with, and then with the way the funding formula works, translating into an 11% increase to Plympton. And that it is completely unsustainable. And yes, so this year, maybe it works. If it doesn't work next year, that we are against the wall now. We have some room under our levy limit right now. We're hoping to keep that under the 7+% increase that we face. And next year, it'll all get used up. It's going to be, so I just want to, and if they want to continue doing capital projects, it's going to have to come out of their operating budget, because I don't believe that the town's going to have capital funding available, although there was reference to an additional settlement that may be coming that I'm totally unaware of, and perhaps that's why the number for the second year of this capital plan is so high. Maybe they're anticipating additional revenue for that. I don't know. I don't know any of the details about that additional settlement. So, a lot to be concerned about in terms of the impact on this year for the other departments in Plympton, and certainly for the issues that are going to come next year. And hopefully we've talked about trying to start this budget process a lot earlier. It's sort of like, because it's going to be, and I don't think next year will be fun, but I think it'll be all the time. One thing I don't know if you explain, I just want to start explaining now how this capital budget is going to work. The way the votes were taken, they're going to, $160,000 that's going to be spent in excess efficiency in 15 for their snow and ice deficit. And then they voted the budget with the 2.2% increase. Then they voted the capital budget, which I think Mark's a little less than you said. I think it's 514.
519.
516. With the March 23rd version of the snow 3-year plan.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I gave you.
To fund this out of excess and deficiency. And I don't really understand exactly how, but by taking that vote in 16, and then by taking that vote, it's not, the word is not encumbered, but somehow that money is kind of designated. So when the Pembroke settlement goes into the community fund, it will replenish the 160 that was for snow and ice. I think there's about $100,000 in space for the 5% cap, and the 516 that will be voted, that's been voted from here, and the balance of which is about 1.2 million that will come back to the town. In terms of voting to support this, the only vote that will be taken in the towns is to support the local assessment. And it will be a local assessment without this number in it, because it's coming from the media. So when we get to that line in the budget in Article 4, and that vote's taken, that is an approval of the capital budget as well. And I think that's a little confusing. I didn't understand it myself a lot. But that's the mechanism by which all of it's done. If that's clear.
But is the number grossed up and then as a funding source is E&D? I mean, is that
The number, yes, yeah, EUV is but in terms of the actual assessments of the towns, they're just based on the budget that we have right now.
so is there any reason why the town can't do what we did at the special?
The only way you can vote no to this capital plan is to vote no to the local assessment.
To the whole thing?
Yeah, it's kind of odd, yeah.
They're trying to make it do it.
And I just want to say for myself, I think some of this stuff needs to be done. I don't want to imply that I think none of it needs to be done, because that's certainly not the case at all.
So by and large, are all the finance committees just kind of said, okay, this is it? And
you know, again, I didn't understand this till Thursday night, how this was going to happen, and I haven't had a chance to ask anyone else. I think there was, Kingston has publicly stated that they, at that meeting, that they support this. Halifax they only spoke to a person with the FinCom chair, who couldn't speak to the committee, and I didn't speak for the committee either. His feeling was that number was too high, 560 is too high, he wished it had been lower.
There was an attempt
I don't know
to,
as an entire committee.
there was an attempt or a suggestion that was floated for 300,000 rather than 600,000, and that didn't fly. There was quite a bit of discussion of sort of polling the representatives there of FinComs and Board of Selectmen, and everyone was very clear that, I mean, this was presented Thursday night, the new budget and the new capital was brand new to us right at that meeting, so nobody had met. And, yeah. So, any other comments, questions? FinCom, we are, as our, I think, next to last task tonight, going to close the warrant. Anything new that's come up since we met an hour ago?
No, just a definitive answer from Barbara that we do need a warrant article if you choose to pay off those.
What's a warrant
those
article?
on bonds. So
Okay.
that definitely has to be.
All right, you got that?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay. So we are, I guess, at the point of adjourning, and one last chance. for
Let me just
anyone.
ask, the other pending settlement, I mean, it was brought up and discussed by somebody.
I mean, you heard it at the other meeting. mentioned.
So can we?
We don't have any, we don't know anything about it. It's also to do with the cost of employees related to the split election.
Oh, it's related to Pembroke further.
And it's Silver Lake can only benefit from it. There'll be no, apparently it's something Silver Lake's paid for that hopefully Pembroke's gonna have to pay their share of again. And it's before a judge.
Okay. So we sort of started the meeting with silence, and I guess we get to end it with silence. Thank you, FinCom, for all your hard work. Thank you, audience and volunteers, and thank you, newspaper. Thank you, Carver Halifax Studio. Thank you, staff, and good night, everyone. Oh, I guess we have to vote. A motion to adjourn.
Motion to close the warrant first?
Thank you. There you go. Save the day. I second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you. Jeez.